Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of A2A, a celebration of the class of 2022. I'm Pedro Guerrero, co-founder of the Alumni Society. Our A2A Alumni to Alumni events were designed for members of the Alumni Society to hear directly from fellow members and learn from their insights and innovations. Our goal is to get inspired by the talent found in our community. And each year, the Alumni Society selects a group of members who represent the breadth and talent and experience reflected in our incredible community. This year's 10 honorees had a transformative year that propelled them to develop even further as leaders. Not only did they reach major professional milestones, they also found ways to pave the way forward and to create legacies that will benefit others for generations to come. And that is why we're honoring them today. These 10 members are engaging in a variety of activities, both in and out of their organizations, that will help uplift Latinos in the professional arena and beyond. These activities include joining corporate boards, spearheading diversity efforts at their companies, helping to fund Latina entrepreneurs, creating scholarships, mentoring, and so much more. Today, we'll hear from 8 of them. Our speakers are ready to share some truly amazing insights, and I encourage you to listen to what they have to say and to connect with them after our event. Now, I'd like to recognize all of the members of the class of 2022 individually by name. First, we have Maria Pacheco, CEO of Storyful. Next, Adriana Samaniego, Principal at Female Founders Fund. And for the 8 class members joining us here today, we have Barbara Barreno Pachal. She is the Human Rights Commissioner at the state of Illinois. Next, we have Esther Mireya Tejeda. Esther is the Enterprise Chief Marketing Officer at Anywhere Real Estate. Third, we have Greg Merrill, Senior Director of Digital Transformation at Nike. Then we have Jose Tavares, the Vice Chair, Bank of America, Private Bank, President of Bank of America, New York City. Next, we have Luis Maes, Vice President of Community Impact at Kansas City Royals. We also have Dr. Miguel Roman, Chief Climate Scientist at Leidos. Next, we have Raul Aldrey, Head of Digital Channels and Partnerships at Citi. And Sandra Cordova Misek, President and CEO at WTTW and WFMT. Last but not least, today's event will be moderated by class of 2021 honoree Yvonne Rodriguez. She is the co-founder of the NFT venture Astrolucha. She's also the Chief Marketing Officer and Growth Officer of Omni Public. Congratulations to all of our class of 2022 honorees, and many thanks to the speakers joining us today. Before I give the floor to Yvonne, I'd like to thank our sponsors for their support and for their efforts to advance Latino leadership. They are Bank of America, Capital One, and Goldman Sachs. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator and fellow member, Yvonne Rodriguez. Thank you, Yvonne, for being here today. It's an honor to have you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Pedro, and thank you all for being here today. I am thrilled to moderate this Getting to Know You discussion with the class of 2022 members. It was amazing to be on last year, and I am thrilled to be back today. I know we're all extremely busy, especially as we start to wrap things up for the holiday season. I'm hoping you all had enough turkey to last you a lifetime. So thank you for taking the time to be here with your peers and fellow members today. Our class of 2022 honorees are here today not only to share their insights, but also to inspire and speak to what's happening around them and how they came into their leadership positions. Each and every one of this year's honorees is exceptionally accomplished, fierce, and I'm thrilled to say part of our network. And we're a great network. Just look around at the power in this virtual room. That's what's so magical about the Alumni Society and why I'm so proud to be a member, as well as a class of 2021 honoree. There is so much influence within this group, and that's what this event is all about. So again, thank you all for being here today. Also, a special shout out to our new members who joined this year. I know I speak for all of us when I say welcome to the Alumni Society Familia. We're glad you found us. And now I'm excited to dive into this conversation with 8 of our class of 2022 honorees so that we can get to know you better. And in that process, make new friends along the way. So let's get started. The first question I'm going to ask you all, and I hope you all are able to answer it as honestly as you can, is why do you do what you do? Perhaps we'll start with you, Barbara.
Thank you, Yvonne. And I'll just start by saying that the views or opinions expressed today are my own, and they are not necessarily reflecting or representing the views or opinions of the state of Illinois or its Human Rights Commission. I believe strongly in the equity and justice and the pursuit of this in a public service environment, and making sure that everyone who wants their rights to be protected can do so in the public sphere. So for me, doing what I do as the vice chair of the Human Rights Commission is extremely important to promote freedom from discrimination in Illinois and to make sure that people's voices are heard. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Esther Mireya, what about you? Why do you do what you do?
Hello, hello. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here today. I'm a marketer and I do what I do because it's equal parts creativity and strategy, and that sings in my heart. And I also think, in the place that I'm in, we have this enormous opportunity to really affect content and the content that is consumed by, young people and people really across the country, and to have a real effect on culture, and how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive each other. And so I think that's the biggest prize of the work that I do, is being able to be part of shaping that and have that kind of an impact on society and culture.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What about you, Greg? Why is it that you do what you do?
Super. Yeah. Thanks, Yvonne. Hola todos. So happy to be here with you today. For me, the internal spark that drives me is a combination of, the past and my future. And I know only a small portion of the blood, sweat, and tears that my ancestors have shed along the way to make my existence possible today. So for me, honoring their work and sacrifice, the single best way I can celebrate them and keep their memory alive is through my contributions in making the world a better place for all. And when I look to my future, it's my three young daughters that serve as my North Star in my daily decisions. And if I can work to remove even one of the issues we face in the world today so that my girls don't have to as they get older, then I'm having the impact that's really important for me to have. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Jose, why do you do what you do?
Well, thanks, Yvonne, and good evening, everyone. It's terrific to be here. I'm honored to be a part of this very esteemed group. One of the things I'm deeply passionate about is building a brighter tomorrow, and building a brighter tomorrow for our children, building a brighter tomorrow for our communities, and simply that's important to me because I feel as though it's important for future generations to come to be in a better place, simply than we're in today. My parents, who are immigrants from the Dominican Republic, worked very hard and believe in those same ideals, and they really took them to heart. So I feel that I'm incredibly fortunate at Bank of America as a banker, and a banker in this business for 25 years, to work with exceptional leaders and employees at the firm who share those same ideals as I do, with the shared goal of creating impact at scale. So that's why I do what I do.
Thank you so much. Luis?
Yes. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here with all of you. And I think my origin story really is why I give back. I mean it's I've dedicated my career to it, and I was born in Colombia, adopted by American parents from New Mexico, and I was raised in a bicultural and bilingual home right outside of Washington D.C. And I always knew that I just needed to give back. That was my place. That's why I'm here. And in terms of kind of why I do it, so it's Greg stole my idea with the kids, so I guess I'll take another track. But for me, it's I look at all the seemingly intractable issues out there, whether it's climate change, poverty, whatever. And I think for me, I look at it and I think sport has an incredible role to play in this. It's something, it has the power to unite and move the world forward. I think like few other sectors can, and I think athletes and coaches in particular can inspire in a way that few can, right? When you combine that with innovative social impact programming, you can really start to move the needle.
Thank you so much, Luis. Miguel?
Great to be here. So I'm a scientist and I build satellites for NASA. And I come with a background that looks at how to try to understand ways to learn from the past so that we don't repeat the same history, particularly as it relates to climate events that are impacting our Hispanic community. So I think a lot about the lessons that we need to learn, no matter how painful or traumatic that may be, and how we as a community need to grow by creating a new culture of science during crises, where we're not just staying in a lab or building a spacecraft, but using the products of those missions and those measurements to scale and improve life for our communities.
Thank you, Miguel. Sandra, why do you do what you do?
Hi, thank you everyone for having me. All these answers are so inspiring. And I'll say for myself, I think I've done a lot of work with purpose with companies over the last few years. And really what you're asking is a purpose question, right? Why you do what you do, not what you do. And I think I've done that with companies, and I've given that some thought for myself over the last few years. I think growing up, and my parents are immigrants from Ecuador, and it was instilled in me, I think, at a young age, the value of education, the role that the arts play in our society, and just sort of contributing to a better society in general. And so I think that is what fuels what I do, especially these last several years. Now I'm in charge of a public media organization. So there is a platform and an organization that is in service of the public. And so I've been able to bring that to my work, and I've also been able to bring that to the nonprofit boards that I sit on. And so thinking about education and the arts and the betterment of society has really driven some of the decisions I've made in service on those nonprofit boards. So I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you. And some of my favorite questions will be answered by you all today. And we're going to start with you, Jose. Is there a moment from your career at this point that you see as defining, or one that you look back on as helping you chart your course? What is that moment for you?
Well, thanks, Yvonne. That's a tough question, right? Because I can draw on experiences as a child growing up in New York City, and can also draw on experiences professionally that I would deem as defining. But the one that sticks out the most to me was dating back to the global financial crisis in 2008. I began my career as a banker at Merrill Lynch in the late 90s. And during the global financial crisis of 2008, our firm was purchased by Bank of America. And before that event, I had been in discussions with a mentor of mine at the time who had taken an interest in my career, who I still keep in touch with, who's no longer at the firm. And we've been having discussions about transitioning from a producer role, which I was at the time, client-facing, to a managerial role. And we had this grand master plan hashed out. But then the crisis came along, and then the subsequent merger with Bank of America. And with that came a series of unexpected events, right? Leadership changes across the firm, new bosses, new people, and what I deem and define as organizational chaos. And I remember having a conversation with him about, what do I do now? I have a new boss, new people that are around me. And, the tendency, I think, for most of us then was just to put our heads down and survive. The advice that mentor gave me at the time was to, find time with the new leadership team or the new boss that was coming in to lead the business. And, introduce myself, get to know him, give him some perspective on my background and my career aspirations, which was to become a leader. And I did ask for that meeting. I set that meeting up, and we spent 60 minutes together before he even started his first day at the firm during his garden leave. And it was a 60-minute interview. It was a pretty intense one. And, after a very long dialogue, he said to me that he had a couple of pretty significant changes that he wanted to make at the company at the time, and to give him time, right? That he would get back to me with some ideas about what I could do and what roles I can step into as a leader. 9 months later, he actually called me into his office and told me he was promoting me into a leadership role, and that taught me several lessons. Right, the first and most important one was that it's really important that at a moment in time when you feel you're ready, that you advocate for yourself. And as I mentioned earlier, the tendency, particularly when there's change happening at your firm, is to keep your head down and survive. Very few times do we actually put ourselves in that position to what I call professionally advocate for ourselves during times of change. So that was the first important takeaway. It wasn't obvious at the time to step in and take that chance with a new boss coming into the firm. But obviously it was the right decision at the time, and one that allowed me to step into a new role and then subsequent roles in leadership after that. And then the second one is the importance of being prepared, right? Because as I mentioned, that one interview turned into a discussion around, if I promote you into this role, what's your game plan, right, to turn the business around? And the preparation ahead of that, right? Because I thought in my mind, should I step into this role? Here are the things that I would change, and how we would change, and how the business operates, and how our clients perceive us. And the importance of preparation has been invaluable, right? It started back then, and even to this day continues to drive all of the decisions that I make and all of the partners that I engage with on a daily basis to run my business.
Thank you so much, Jose. Thank you for the insight and the inspiration. Esther Mireya, my fellow marketer and Vernonian, you are next. What is a part of your leadership journey that you didn't feel prepared for or had to grow into? Is there a part of your journey that you perhaps wish you'd understood better before you started your career?
Yeah, look, I'm going to actually dovetail on what Jose just said. It couldn't have been better if we planned it, and we didn't, just so that everyone's clear. But, I think there's a real truth to this idea that I think culturally we've bought hook, line, and sinker into this theory of, just work hard and success will come. It's the Horatio Alger bootstrap story of America. If you just work really, really hard, you will be successful. And I think I believe that, right? I have no reason not to believe that. And it's such an incomplete way to look at things, right? Because we know there's a million reasons why simply working hard is not going to guarantee you success. We know that would be the case if we were all starting from the same place, and we're not. There's a variety of different obstacles or starting points for every single one of us for many different reasons. And so I had this kind of really harsh reality check early in my career when I was really, really working really, really hard. And I thought, at some point, some magical person is going to fly into my cubicle and say, we see how hard you're working. And as a result of how hard you're working, that we're going to notice on our own, you are going to get this big promotion, and then your career is going to take off. And of course, naturally, that did not happen. And what a surprise, right? And so what I realized really early, thank goodness, in my career that that has really shifted the way I think and look and proceed with things is that your success is actually not entirely based on working hard. Your success is based on working hard and also working smart. And part of our responsibility as professionals, as leaders, and as so on, is, to Jose's point, to advocate for ourselves and also to advocate for others, and to bring people along on the journey with us. We are ultimately responsible for our career. Your boss is not responsible for your career. Their boss is not responsible for your career. You are responsible for your career, and you're also responsible for building the kind of life that you want, which in large part is related to the career that you have. And so the fact that I realized that pretty early on in my life really helped me think about my career as something that I needed to market, right? So I have to advocate for myself, and I also have to market and champion for my successes, the things that I'm working on, the impact that I'm having on an organization, the impact that I'm having on a team, in order to really chart a path for myself, because the path is not going to be charted on its own, and it's not going to be charted if I just keep my head down. And so the other piece of that, right, in realizing that sort of really different reality than what we're all kind of taught as we're growing up, is that there's a huge opportunity, like I mentioned earlier, to also bring other people along with you, right? It's our responsibility, I think all of our responsibility as leaders, and particularly Latino leaders, women leaders, people of color leaders, to be the champions for folks who maybe haven't figured out this lesson yet, and to help them get comfortable with being their own advocates, championing for their work and speaking up for people in rooms where, you know, their name should be mentioned because they're doing great work. And so that is a huge lesson that I learned really early on, and changed the course of not just how I think about my work, but also how I think about how I lead. And it's, I think, heavily influenced by the fact that I am a marketer. So let's think about how we market our work. So it's not just the working hard, it's the working smart. And it's the building of relationships. And it's the being able to articulate and story tell on your impact and the value that you're bringing to the work that you do, to the teams that you're on, to the people that you work with, to the organization that you are a part of.
Thank you so much, Mireya. Greg, I would love to call you next, answer this question. What parts of development are most important to you? Do you consciously take time to work on new skills, or do you only see your growth later on after working through something new?
Yeah, thanks, Yvonne. And I think the key word there is growth, something I get excited about. And I have to say, before I dig in here, I think the class of 2022 here is going to be the most synchronized group, because I'm going to pull a thread through from Jose all the way through to where we're talking. So the single best way, I think, as we talked about, to advocate for yourself is through self-development and growth and working smarter. The best thing you can do to advocate for yourself is to start today and figure out what you need to get better on. So I think when you look at growth with the right mindset, growth can and will happen at all times. And actually, I see growth most often when there is an insatiable curiosity that cannot be quiet. Now, growth can be passive and sort of come over time simply by exposing yourself to new experiences or opportunities or risks. And for me, as you can tell already, growth is something that's very important to me and something I work on constantly. It's an ongoing thing. It's like going to the gym. You can't stop. It's an everyday thing. Some of the greatest lessons that have come directly for me are from failure. And so while loss or failure may sting in the moment, maintaining that perspective and that growth mindset is really important, because the silver lining, even in that failure, the silver lining of growth is there. So the importance is keeping that open-minded perspective so that you can receive that growth. So that's a bit of passive. Now, active, like growth can also come through direct action when you're intentionally working on improving yourself. Human connection and relationships are the skill that I tend to work on most often, frankly, because I enjoy people so much. And I think life is built on relationships. I pride myself on the quality of connections and relationships that I've built along my journey. And I don't think any single person can tell you that they got where they are completely on their own. I think only together can we accomplish greatness. And that is one of the many reasons why the work of the Alumni Society is so critical in creating that space for these connections to flourish. And so I personally am very appreciative of the work that they do. And so a quick shout out and a thank you to Pedro, Vianney, Jill, and so many others that have dedicated themselves to this work. And I'll wrap with quickly sharing my personal mantra, which is in pursuit of a better future for all through empathetic leadership, human connection, and disruptive innovation. My goal is to be the best version of myself every single day, because only when I'm at my best can I be most effective in helping others? So my parting question to all of you is, what do you need to be the best version of yourself today? And once you know that answer, go out, courageously ask for whatever help and support that you need. Because right here, in this very event, you are surrounded by folks that are eager to help you. Thanks, Yvonne.
Thank you, Greg. That's a great insight, and absolutely, this network is phenomenal. Appreciate it very much. Barbara, I would love to call on you next to let us in on what inspires you outside of your role. Are there motivators or inspiration that might be unexpected?
Thanks, Yvonne. There are two things that inspire me that I'll talk about today. One of them is simply the next generation, the people who are coming up, the Latinos, Latinas, Latinx, Latina community, people who want to make a real impact in our world, who want to change how things are done, who don't like the way things are being done and want to make them better, they want to innovate, they want to create, they want to break barriers, smash ceilings, all of those things, and change our world and protect our world and our planet. Those people inspire me every single day, and I spend a lot of time every year mentoring people who want to be lawyers, people who want to go into public service, people who believe that government is a way to solve problems and to help people. I'm very passionate about the next generation because that is who is going to be our future leaders. That's our leaders of tomorrow, and that's who we must be cultivating and helping them succeed, especially people who are underrepresented in the law, in government, in the private sector. When I was coming up, my father's an electrical engineer from Ecuador, but he had not attended law school. No one in my family went to law school. So it was something I had to figure out. And how I figured it out was by talking to mentors, other Latinos, Latinas, people who had gone to law school. And I want to be that resource, that person who helps inspire others and who I'm inspired by, so that more Latinos and Latinas and people in the Latina community can change how things are being done and improve our world. And that is one source of inspiration for me. Another source of inspiration is the creativity that comes from engagement on virtual platforms such as the Alumni Society Slack group, such as LinkedIn. I really enjoy being on LinkedIn and sharing my thoughts and being creative with it and seeing who responds to the posts that I make. And I'm so inspired by the way in which people on this stage and others are creating every day. They're posing questions, they're asking people to think about things in a different way, to consider a different way of doing things, to be innovative and try new things, and to be vulnerable and to put information out there that may not be something you would have talked about 5 years ago, but this platform creates the ability to raise your voice in a way that can be impactful. And every day when I'm on LinkedIn, when I'm looking at the Slack group and see new members of the Alumni Society, I'm always impressed by all of the wonderful things that they have done and will do, most importantly. And as others have mentioned, it's about lifting people up as you climb, lending a hand, also giving back and making sure that those coming up have the resources they need so their journey is easier, so their path is a little smoother, so they can get where they need to get faster than how long it has taken some of us to get where we need to get, or our parents or grandparents. And for those reasons, those people inspire me, both on these virtual platforms and these networks, as well as young people who are really courageous. And we're seeing it play out all over the world, but in the United States, who are very courageous to challenge status quo and norms and find a better world. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Barbara, for inspiring us every day. Appreciate you. Sandra, would love to know if you can remember a specific time in which you made it a point to help lift someone up or reach back to facilitate someone else's growth.
Yeah, I think it's really important to do that. And I couldn't underscore more Esther and Greg's comments about encouraging self-advocacy. Sometimes, though, you see talented people, especially at the junior level, who are not at that point where they can self-advocate. And so that's where I think it's our responsibilities to identify quality talent, identify people who have potential, and kind of plant a seed with them sometimes, right? I mean, I've had people who've worked for me who I thought would be great in another role throughout the company, a promotion. And so planting a seed like, hey, maybe you should go for that job. Or have you ever thought about working in that department? Not because you don't want them to work for you anymore, but because you see the potential, right, where they may not see it. And so encouraging that, well, why not you? Why couldn't you go for that promotion? I think is really important. And sometimes I think as you get more senior in the organization, you sometimes are a little less connected to people at the more junior ranks. So it's really important to still try and identify that talent. Who are the people who are the hand raisers, who volunteer for special projects? Who are those people who are just naturally curious? And encourage them to go do more and different and take on more responsibility, because sometimes it doesn't come naturally to people. I'll give you an example where there was one time where I actually had to pass someone over for a promotion, which is not an easy thing to do. But we had a whole conversation about, what are the things that this person could focus on and what are other opportunities. And the conversation came about going to business school. And it's not something that he had ever thought about. And so, helping that person through those conversations and through those thoughts about what a next step could be, and then taking that next step, writing that letter of recommendation, encouraging and answering questions throughout that process. I think that's just an example, right? So sometimes, it doesn't come naturally to people, and we just have to remember that it's our jobs to, push people along and plant those seeds where we can.
Thank you so much, Sandra.
Sure.
Thank you for the insight. We appreciate you. Miguel, is there one unique habit or soft skill you feel greatly impacts your productivity, efficiency, and success?
Yes, so I'll try to also lady pad here to the conversation. I've heard two words that have sort of stuck with me so far, and one of them is disrupt, and the other one is scale. The ability for us to create an impact at scale. I come from a community where the expectations, if you really think about it as a scientist, are not very big. You publish or you perish. You publish your work, and if you win the lottery and you make a big discovery, you're good. You don't have to, you stay in your cave, keep coding, keep doing research, everything's gonna be fine. But for those who have that spark and want to do something out there, and they feel responsibility for society to contribute, you need to use those qualities. You need to be able to do things at speed and at scale, and to do that, you need to disrupt the way things are done. And that's one of the reasons why I joined Leidos this year as the chief climate scientist. I work with a team known as the AI Machine Learning Accelerator, and these folks are amazing. They traditionally, when you look at climate data, you have to wait for that data to be beamed from a satellite, taken over from Antarctica by fiber optic cables, and come in and use that information to help determine everything from our today's forecast to the number of fires that we're fighting today across the nation. And these folks figure out that you can put a tiny little supercomputer on the satellite, do all that, and beam the data directly to our first responders. Imagine. And so that's the kind of innovation that is driven by purpose. And a lot of what I've done in my career is to sort of follow that in a critical way. How can we use technologies that were intended originally to save lives, but nevertheless are critical for saving lives? I'll give you one last example. After Hurricane Maria, I was doing research using an instrument known as the VIIRS instrument, the Visible Infrared Imaging Radiometer Suite. It's on board 3 NOAA satellites, the SWAMI MPP NOAA 20 and the recently launched NOAA 21 satellite. And this instrument can map power outages from space after a major hurricane. It wasn't intended or to be designed to do that, but it nevertheless does. And I built a program to ensure that that tool can be used to track transparency and accountability in how the federal government provides aid to communities across all our nation, including the Caribbean, the Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands. So I think that's a soft skill, being able to have a critical view, question the conventional wisdom on how you use technology for the greater good.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Very insightful reality into being a scientist. There's so much more, right? And so much empathy goes into it, as we talked about the other day as well. Um, Luis, I am very excited to ask you this question because I do feel like all of us have some skin in this game in terms of how we go about it. In what actionable way can leaders help pave the way for more representation in their industries?
Yeah, thanks, Ivan. I think it's a great question and one that I know everyone here is engaged in. And so, you know, I think I will bring the kids into this one. Look, I think I look at this in through two different lenses, right? So one would be a personal, a family lens, and the other would be organizational. I think as a Latino dad, brother, tío, esposo, I think it all starts with your home base, right? And I think it starts with being a role model, and showing those that are closest to you that, that your industry and the professional world is a place for them. And I've always impressed upon my family, like I'm sure many, family folks here do, the value of education and the importance of work, right? And in the industries that I've been in. But there is really nothing like, very practically speaking, kind of bringing your kids and your family and the primos to your place of work, right? And I remember I took my oldest son to an event with the U.S. soccer team at Nike when I was there, when I used to work for them on the campus. And of course, he was pumped to see all of his favorite stars, but he asked how he could get a job doing the same thing, right? And of course, it opens up a conversation, right, about all the careers and things you can do at a place like Nike and all the other companies that are represented here. And I think the bottom line is that, the one way we can get more representation into our industry is by starting at the hyper local level, right? Which really, for all of us, is your family and those closest to you, right? And then I think organizationally, look, I'm a huge believer in the power of ERGs, of which many of us here, are engaged in. And of course, this network like the Alumni Society, I've been very involved in the alumni organizations for the schools where I've gone at UVA and Duke. And, I've seen the power of the networking. I mean, Sandra talked about, how she was able to kind of inspire and get someone to, kind of apply to business school and these types of things. And I think just, whether it's leading a scholarship program that funnels into a particular industry or just going to an event, just showing up. And I had organized an event not too long ago, and there was someone who had been, their dream was to get into the gaming industry, and I was working with EA Sports at the time, and just through that conversation, I just showed up to the event and was just there, and happened to talk with him, and he'd been trying to get into this industry, and he recently just got an internship, and so just that kind of stuff, right? And we all have those types of vignettes, and I think it's powerful. And when you do that over and over and over and just show up, sometimes that's how you can do it. And I think I'll end with this. I think the common denominator between kind of the family and then organizationally is that it all starts with relationships, and it all starts with just seeing them as humans, seeing them as fellow Latinos and Latinas, and just doing everything that we can to pay it forward.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you. And now I'm going to ask the final question of all of you before we head into our Q&A session. So this final question is directly tied to this year's theme for the class, which is paving the way, because each one of these individuals has paved the way in their industries and throughout their careers. So who paved the way for you, and how are you repaying that favor? I would like to call out Barbara first.
Two people in my life paved the way for me, and a third person who I'll mention. My parents, my father, who I mentioned earlier, and my mother, who both used education to lift themselves out of poverty and give us a much better future and that they had. And my congresswoman when I was in high school, Hilda El Solis, who was the first Latina elected to the California State Senate. She was, in addition to being a congresswoman, Secretary of Labor in the Obama administration. And seeing her in that position of leadership made me realize that I could do this, that I could be in public service, like many others who you need to see something to believe you can do it. So those three people were definitely ones who paved the way forward for me. And what do? I mentor people, I volunteer, I serve on boards, I do things that I need to do to help people and also to serve, because it's not just about your job, but it's about your community and your family and people who you impact in more ways than one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Esther Mireya, what about you?
Very similarly, I mean, who's paved the way for me? Certainly my family, starting, back with like my great aunt and my grandfather, who was a physician, and my mom, who went on to be a CMO, as I am now, and my dad, who was an entrepreneur, and my grandma, who came to the United States in the 50s and raised her children and worked at a time when women didn't work, right? And set this example of like, you know, you gotta figure it out. And so figuring it out has been the name of the game, for every single generation since. um what how do I pay it forward? I mean, I think in a lot of the ways that Barbara just mentioned, I mentor a lot. I make myself available a lot for career conversations and help. I write a lot of recommendation letters. I do all of those things. I think we all do them. I sit on boards. I do all of those things. But I think beyond that, what I believe that I do and what I find is the most important thing to do is I show up everywhere as my full self. Um, and what that means is that I show up exactly as how I am, right? I've sort of gotten away from notions of how you're supposed to show up and how you're not supposed to show up and what this looks like and what professional looks like and whatever. And I just show up exactly like me, because I think that gives other people permission and space to also be who they are and be comfortable in their skin and raise their hand and ask their questions and be entirely engaged. And if I can create an environment or a culture where everyone around me is comfortable and able to show up exactly like who they are also, then I think we are on the right path. And we're talking a lot about career and success and growth and future generations and kids. And I have my 4-year-old watching this on YouTube on the screen downstairs, and all of that. But I think the biggest point here for all of us is that we all have a seat at the table. We're on this list, we're having this conversation because in one way or another we have a seat at the table. And I think what makes that valuable, it's not the value to us, and I think not even necessarily the value to my immediate circle. It's the value that I can bring by having a seat at the table. How many seats can I bring with me, and how many other seats can I put at that table for people moving forward? And so, just showing up, being myself, speaking how I speak, wearing what I wear and feeling how I feel and being all of those things all the time is my contribution. I hope that it allows other folks to do the same.
Thank you for being you, Estamidea. Thank you. Greg, what about you? Who paved the way for you and how are you repaying the favor?
Yeah, I've got one person in mind, and I think in many ways we all stand on the shoulders of giants, but one person in particular for me is my mom. And while she never had a robust sort of formal education, she always led with her heart, and she showed me that the heart is often wiser than the brain. And so to this day, my proudest, I would say, leadership quality is empathy. And you heard me talk about that a little bit before. And empathy comes from the heart, right? And given the chaos and the complexity of the world today, I think we could all use a bit more compassion and empathy. So thank you, Mom, for that. And the one way that I pay it forward now is very similar to Barbara, through a lot of mentoring and advising, both inside Nike, and I'm an executive advisor for our Latino and Friends ERG that Luis talked about. So such an important aspect. And a lot of the other kind of Latino and Latina founders and leaders that I mentor and advise outside of Nike as well are folks that are actively building and scaling new businesses. And there's two groups in particular that I spend most of my time with. One is LBAN, or the Latino Business Action Network out of Stanford. And the other is In Tandem DAO. It's a decentralized autonomous organization that I'm co-founding, and it serves as an accelerator ecosystem for historically underrepresented groups. Thanks, Yvonne.
Thank you so much, Greg. Appreciate your sharing. So, Jose, what about you? Who paved the way for you and how are you repaying that favor?
Well, Yvonne, I'd say in my case, it took a village, no pun intended, but it really did. And, I've been fortunate throughout my life, as I'm sure everyone on this, as part of this program has, to have had folks from all walks of life that have been impactful in sort of paving the way for me and ultimately, allowing me to be the person that I am today. From that small business owner growing up in New York City who gave me my first job at the age of 12 in his hardware store, to my first middle school basketball, baseball coach, my high school basketball coach, my college coaches, to my family, my mother, my dad, my sister, my terrific wife, my two daughters. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention them. To really the entire network of folks that I've worked with over my 25 plus year career, mentors, sponsors, bosses, managers who have worked for me. Everyone on the team, I feel, has had a pretty unique and deep impact on my life. So I wish I could highlight one person in particular, but as I said, it really did take a village. And I'm hugely thankful to that army, if you will, of folks who have been a big part of my life. And the way I give back, similar to what everyone else said, I sit on several nonprofit boards. The two that I'm most passionate about are one related to sports. So Luis, similar to you, sort of in that sphere, sports was very important to me growing up, and provided a bridge, if you will, from from the how we grew up without a whole lot of money here in New York City to opening this wide variety of opportunities for me in high school, college, and beyond. And then I also spent a lot of time with organizations that help bring kids out of poverty here in New York City. And then here at the company, I'm the co-executive sponsor of our Hispanic organization for Latino advancement. And, it's a position I've been in now for a little bit over a year. And I really enjoy my time there, essentially working with, senior and junior Latinos across the firm and helping propel their careers and advancement here at the company. So.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jose. I wanted to switch gears a bit. We have some time. I don't know if you would like to say something, Jill, or if I know that we have a little bit less time than we envisioned for Q&A, but we still have some time, and I would love to have some of these amazing questions answered. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and dive deep into the Q&A session. If you haven't asked questions but want to ask questions, please feel free to do so. In the Q&A, you will be able to see the questions that have already been asked. If you like one of those over another, you can also vote. Your vote will have that question move up, just FYI. So there is one with 2 votes, and so I will ask this one first, and maybe one of you can answer it. Have any of you ever taken advantage of executive coaching? If yes, what was your biggest takeaway?
I can answer that. This is Sandra. I definitely have taken advantage of executive coaching, and I think it's one of those times where working with a very good executive coach, he or she can point out blind spots for you that you may not see, right? So get a better understanding of yourself and also be aware of, potential blind spots. And I think, I encourage it with my team as well. And working as a team to get to know each other. But the executive coaching, sort of not just at the most senior level, but at the middle management level, if that is made available to you, I highly recommend taking advantage of it, because what they're doing is an investment in you. And that's how I see executive coaching.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that answer. I am going to ask the next question with 4 votes. Have you ever taken a step back, seniority-wise or salary-wise, in order to get unstuck and eventually move forward?
I can take that one. Since I spent most of my young career as a poor graduate student, I can tell you for sure, it's not that you're unstuck. Is that you need to really take a big impulse. Para coger impulso, para eso vas atrás. And I tell that a lot to my students and my junior colleagues, that sometimes it's better to remain a poor graduate student and finish that PhD, finish that MBA in 1 year, but you will see the fruits of your hard labor faster. So that's an educational experience that I recommend to a lot of people, that, once you made a commitment after your bachelor's degree, you buy a home, you buy a car, perhaps you get married and have kids. Really hard to get an MBA in that position, because now you build legacy and you don't want to give it away. And so it's very important to think about your strategy, especially for those young ones that we have in high school, to start early so that you can reap the rewards in the long run.
Can I just add to that, Yvonne? Is it
Yeah.
possible? I think, I just want to add to what Miguel said, that, part of getting unstuck doesn't necessarily have to be changing roles, right? There's a lot of ways to grow and expand your career, even in the role that you have. There's a lot of ways to go, and you must take it upon yourself. To my earlier point, your career is really just your responsibility, to go looking for those stretch opportunities, so that you are preparing yourself in the role that you're in to go for the role that you want. And sometimes that's lateral, and sometimes that's cross-functional, and sometimes that's interdepartmental. But the idea is, you have the role that you have, but you work in the organization, right? So where can you make impact in the broader organization, outside of your role, outside even possibly of your team, right? And how can you use that experience to then get you to where it is that you ultimately want to go? I like to think that the role that you have right now is preparing you for the role that you're going to have. And that's how you should measure what you're doing today. Is it getting me closer to where I want to be next year? And is that going to get me closer to where I want to be in 5 years? And we can sort of flex that in and out of our job description. And we shouldn't be beholden to what's in the job description. Really, it's your career to manage.
There's some other really great questions. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. So we're going to have to answer these perhaps offline, Jill, if that's okay with you. I wanted to go ahead and thank you all for being here, because it really has been an amazing session. I thought 2021 was amazing, but 2022 has really blown it out of the water with all your responses. So thank you all so much again for joining us and for your time today. You've left us all with plenty of actionable advice and many, many nuggets of insights and inspiration, as we can see, questions as well. So muchísimas gracias, and congratulations again on being recognized as members of the class of 2022. I know that I, for one, am super honored to be connected to you all now. So I'll turn it over back to you, Pedro, for final remarks.
Thank you, Yvonne, and wow, what an amazing discussion. I want to thank our class of 2022 honorees for sharing their insights with us today. You clearly knocked it out of the park this year and proved yet again why you were all selected to be the Alumni Society's class of 2022. Also, I want to thank our sponsors again for their support. Thank you to Bank of America, Capital One, and Goldman Sachs for all that you do to elevate the professional Latino community and for making today a reality. In closing, just a quick note to everyone. Please keep an eye out for an email with a short survey. We sincerely appreciate your feedback on today's event. Our events team reads each and every response. On a similar note, at the start of December, we send out our annual membership survey. We want to hear from you, so please take time to share your candid thoughts. Your feedback will help shape our plans for 2023. On that note, and in looking ahead to next year, we'll be focused on driving deeper member value, providing more in-person event opportunities, and laying the groundwork for our foundation. Gracias a todos. Have a wonderful holiday season, and see you again in 2023.